Well, hello, hello, lovely ladies. How are you? For those of you that were not on the call on Thursday, I am re-recording because the recording didn't record all the way and it got corrupt. So I'm doing a take two and recording again here for you guys that were not able to be on the live. So hopefully this is helpful for you. I truly hope you're finding these practices restorative and peaceful, and you're learning about yourself and you're taking deep dives into you and how you operate and how you can navigate through this life a little bit more confident, a little stronger, a little more at peace, and recognizing that you actually have the power to create more peace, create more energy, create more stillness, have agency in who you are and how you move through life. So really excited to be here with you guys, even though it's take two, still super excited to be here. So interestingly enough, we went over a lot of information. So the last 2 weeks was both module 3 and 4. In module 3 and 4, we learned about all kinds of good information. So we learned how to repattern the brain. We learned about neuroscience. We learned how to create energy, how to harness energy when we're depleted. And we learned the difference between um, actually restoring energy versus taking away energy. So we've learned a lot in the last couple of weeks. So I hope that you have had a lot to take away. I'm excited about this conversation today. So here's the thing. In the modules that I create for you guys, I try my very best to keep it under 30 minutes. So I pack tons of information into these modules, um, and this 20-30 minute modules. And I try and throw in as much at you as I can in that small space because I know you're busy. I value your time and I want you to be able to get as much information in as short as amount of time. And what these calls are really for are to deepen the practices, to truly understand more about whatever you're learning and whatever it is that you go, I'm not sure I fully understand that. Or how could I implement that in my life? Or how could I implement that to this situation? That's the beauty of these calls. So there are no dumb questions. So don't ever feel like, oh, I don't want to say that because I feel uncomfortable or embarrassed. I don't have to use your name. In fact, I haven't used anyone's name yet. And there are no silly questions. So never feel embarrassed to say, how would I apply that? Or maybe I didn't fully get that, because I'm more than happy to go over it with you ladies. So that's truly what these lives are all about, is just finding more depth in the conversation and understanding things more and taking a deeper dive. So what I'm really fascinated about with this call is um, the questions that I had all really revolved around the same topic, which I love. So I'm like, yes, okay, you guys are getting this, you're moving through it, and you want to learn and understand a little bit more and how to practice it in your own life. So I took lots of notes. So I'm going to go over a bunch of stuff with you. All the questions I tried to answer, and hopefully I answered it in a way that is helpful to you. So everything that the questions revolved around, surprisingly, were about fact versus story and the 4-point reflection. So if you recall, it was a process that we did in learning how to look at different situations from a different point of view, right? Understanding the fact of what has taken place versus the story that we have created. So this is an incredibly, incredibly powerful practice. It really is, because there's so much behind it that I didn't go into on the modules, because there's a ton of number one neuroscience. Your girl loves some science. So I'm going to back everything with science. There's tons of neuroscience supporting why this process is so helpful and what it does. So I'm going to go into the science behind it. I'm going to go break down how you use this process, as well as give a couple of examples that people asked me to give more in depth with their specific questions. Okay, so let's start off by recognizing that the fact versus story is, here's the thing, this is not about fixing the problem. This is not about creating a solution. What this is all about is helping you to free yourself from the story that you've created around it, right? So this is, we've all done this, right? We've all had an experience happen. Somebody said something, um, an argument occurred, or a certain thing happened where we created meaning that maybe wasn't quite there, right? Where we decided what we thought that person meant by the words they actually said, or what they really feel based on the words that they said, or what could happen, or catastrophize, or scenariolize. Like, we've all done this. We're all guilty, right? And here's the thing, most of us walk around reacting to things that actually haven't happened. I mean, think about that. We walked around reacting to things that haven't actually happened. Like I said, we react to what somebody may think. We react to what we think they feel. We react to uh, based on a decision that we've made. Okay. And that is not to blame anybody or to shame yourself. This is completely all about awareness and acknowledgement. That's it, just learning. That's it. So we don't have to put any shame or blame on us. This is really just about learning and recognizing that what truly creates the stress in our lives are far more what we think about it and what we have created around the situation than the situation itself. So that's what we're going to talk about today with the fact versus story. So, number one, as far as science is concerned, I want to talk about how this happens. So, this is really between the amygdala versus the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So, it affects the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex because what happens is the prefrontal cortex is where discernment happens. It's where logic comes in. It's where you go, okay, this is what's happened, and you calmly kind of rationalize through things. The amygdala, it gets fired when there's stress. So when something happens that creates a stress response, and there's cortisol, and there's fight, flight, and freeze that happens, the amygdala creates chaos, because in that moment when the stress response goes up, you no longer are operating from your prefrontal cortex. You are operating from the amygdala, and the amygdala is the when the alarm sound, like, things are going on, and it does not have a real logical brain. The logical aspect goes out the window, amygdala takes over, and that's when we can kind of get ourselves into trouble sometimes. So this practice is really about understanding that better and just how the brain works. So the amygdala's job, its entire job, is to keep you safe. So it does that firing thing because it wants you, it's developed from when we had to run from saber-toothed tigers and things of that nature. Now it's just our boss. Now it's a traffic jam. Now it's things like that. So understanding that the brain is well-meaning, but sometimes is reactionary, and that reactionary is what kind of can get us into trouble from time to time, and more importantly, create the stress, what we're all trying to kind of navigate around. So I'm going to refer back to my notes here because I wrote down a bunch of notes. So here's the thing. So the fact versus story, the whole process is writing down, right? Writing down the fact of what happened, writing down how you felt about it, coming up with discernment and creating a neutral point of view from it, how you want to move forward from that space. And here's the thing, it's more than just a journaling practice, because actually brain scans have shown that when we write out our stresses, when we write down our problems, we write what we're concerned about or worried about, the brain actually signals calm just by acknowledging it. Just by writing out, the brain goes, okay, I'm going to re-engage manually with the prefrontal cortex because it's feeling safe. It's pulling your brain out of the alarm system, which is beautiful. And when you write out that story, what happens that's even more magical is you're creating distance between yourself and the narrative that you've created. And that is where the magic happens. You're creating distance between the narrative that's creating the stress, right? Creating that narrative, and yourself, where you're able to look at it from a different point of view. So neuroscience calls this effect labeling, right? When you write down your emotion and you name it, like I was saying, that's where brain scans are showing that, you know what? The brain actually responds well when you write things down. The brain feels safe when you're writing it down, acknowledging your thoughts and feelings and thinking about it from a more logical standpoint than just the right, the fear. So you're not just writing in a journal, you're literally rewiring the brain, right? This is what we called laying down neural pathways. You're rewiring the brain's threat response every time you do this. So you're creating more resilience. You're creating your brain to signal a sense of calm versus triggered. So there's certain things that you find trigger you over and over again. When you start doing processes like this, you're actually teaching your brain to come from a place of calm and come from a place of discernment and neutrality rather than alarming and stressful and chaos and all of that. So you're teaching your brain, oh, there's a different way to go about this because I'm showing you a new way. So the more you can do this, the more powerful that it is in your actual everyday life. It's truly amazing stuff here. So let's talk about it. So number one, the first thing we're going to do, because I want to break down how it works before we go into the examples. So number one, the situation. We want to write down what's happening in your life that's causing this emotion. And let's take a step back before I even go into this. I want you to come up and think of a situation, whether it's an old wound and something that's bothered you for years, or maybe it's something right now that's occurred, or maybe something that's recently happened that you kind of keep thinking about and create some stress in your life. So just come up with something that you can get to. And before we start, let's take some breath. Okay, so let's take some nice deep breaths because this can be a little triggering. We're thinking about stressful events. So let's take some deep breaths as we move through this, in through the nose and out through the mouth. One more deep cleansing breaths. Let's get grounded. If you want to do the neurovascular hold while we're doing this, you can hold here. You can even hold hand over your heart. That's more comfortable. Or even the belly. One more deep cleansing breath. Doesn't this feel better already? Good job. Okay. So let's come into this process grounded. So first what we're going to do is talk about and write down. So if you're taking notes, what you want to do is write down number one, what is happening in your life that's causing the stress? Just a sentence or two. Just write down like what is activating you. Don't overthink it. You're not telling a story. Just write it down. X, Y, and Z, right? I'm upset with so and so because they did X, Y, Z. Simple. And then you want to go to the fact. And this sometimes can be hard to differentiate the fact. So, one of the best ways I can explain on how to write down the fact of the story is think about if somebody was recording when that situation happened, recording you with a security camera, right? And you just got to play it back. And there was no emotions involved. There's no, well, she says this or she felt that. There's none of that. There's just the footage. There's no assumption, there's no interpretation about somebody's motive. It's just raw, neutral fact, right? And I'll get into some examples after this, but not because she feels like this or he feels like that. It's just he said this, they said this, right? That's it, just the facts. So then you want to write down a fact, the facts of what happened in that situation. And a good test, a kind of a good rule of thumb when kind of coming up with this fact is if you were in a room full of people when this happened, would the whole room agree with that? Would the whole room say, yeah, that's what happened, not just that's how you feel about it? And then you want to go into the feeling and the story of it. So here's where you can write down what your brain has created around the fact. So how you're feeling, what's come up for you, what you're pissed off about, what you're hurt about, what you're angry about. Like, just write it all down. Because what happens is this is where your past experiences come into play. This is where your fears, your insecurities, your assumptions, like how you've been brought up, your culture, your history, how that all plays a part into this. So, but it's also important for you to recognize this it's an interpretation, right? So write all that down, get everything clear, write it all out, write the story. Okay. And then lastly, this is where the discernment comes into play, right? The discernment is where you get to take a step back and take pause from this grounded deep breath, right? And you can even take some deep breaths before you get to this point and write down what is true and realize what your mind is adding to it. For example, is this story serving me? Was this true? Did they actually say this? Or am I coming up with a scenario based on what they said? Am I creating meaning to something that they never said? Is there another way to see this? Is there another way to come from this? Like, hey, if I was talking to my child, maybe, or a coworker and trying to help them through this, what would I say to them? How would I help them gain clarity? Um, what would you tell a friend in this? And here's the thing, discernment isn't about being positive or dismissing your feelings. Discernment, as we learned in module 2, is really about choosing what you want to carry moving forward instead of being dragged by the narrative that you've created, right? Discernment is going, you know what? I don't need to subscribe to anyone else's thoughts, feelings, or opinions here. I'm just going to center and think about how this would feel coming from a neutral standpoint. And how do I want to feel moving forward from this? Do I want to feel the chaos? Do I want to feel all that polarity? Do I want to feel triggered? Or do I want to move through this from a healthy place, from a sound place, from a grounded place? Right. So, how would you prefer to move forward from this? And so now I want to give you some real examples because I had a couple of people ask me specific examples. And so one, which I think is something that probably most people can relate to too. This was the example is the text that wasn't returned is what I'm just calling it. So the situation is a friend of hers, she texted a friend of hers a few days ago and the friend didn't respond. So, and this is a friend that they went out and they had dinner and she texted her something and the friend didn't respond back. So here's the fact. So if you break that down, the fact is I sent a text message, 3 days have passed, there has been no reply. That's just the facts, right? I'm not adding any emotion to it. I'm not adding a narrative to it. That's just a fact. But the story that she's telling herself is, oh gosh, she's probably upset with me. I must have done something wrong. I probably said something wrong at dinner the last week. Maybe she's pulling away. I always do this. I push people away, and maybe she doesn't actually value our friendship as much as I do, right? I feel we've all been here, whether it's through a female friend or a male friend or someone we're dating, or everyone's probably experienced something similar to this. Here's the discernment. The discernment is I don't actually know why she hasn't responded, right? Because that's a fact. We don't know. She could be busy. She could have thought she responded and never pressed send. I mean, how many of us have done that? I've done that a million times where I think I responded to somebody but never pressed send. Um, she's overwhelmed. She forgot. And the story her mind is running is based from fear or rejection, not evidence, right? And that's what you can create. The discernment here is I'm running this story based on fear, based on my own insecurities, but not on evidence that she's actually any of these things, right? So I can reach out again, or I can give it space, or and if I decide to give it space, I can do that from a grounded place and not from a place of panic. And I could always, it's real easy to just go, oh, hey, you know what? I sent you a message, just checking in to see if you received it. Something like that, something simple. So this is just a simple way to give like a little simple situation to make it make more sense to you guys. I had another one here, which is another one I think a lot of people can relate to. This is the meeting I wasn't invited to. Now, this could be a meeting, a party, an event, and anything. This particular, situation was she had a coworker, or her coworkers had a meeting and they didn't include her, and she was feeling left out, not feeling valued, not feeling worthy, all those things, right? So the situation is just my coworkers had a meeting and I wasn't included. Okay. That's the situation. The fact is, a meeting occurred and I was not on the invite list, right? No emotion. That's just a fact. The story is, oh, they're talking about me. They don't respect my input. They don't like me. I'm being edged out of my position. I need to start looking for another job. Um, your brain could go in 1,000 different directions with this, right? So these are all the things she was concerned about. Like, oh my gosh, do I need to start looking for a new job? Is something wrong? And then the scenarializing happens and the chaos happens and the catastrophizing happens. So the discernment part of this would look like this. I don't know the purpose of the meeting. Maybe it didn't even involve my department. Um, I don't know why I wasn't included. It may have been an oversight, or it just may not have been relevant to my role. And before I spiral, I can simply ask, right? You can just simply say, hey, I wasn't involved in that meeting. Was there a reason? Right. And that's another thing as women is we tend to snuff out our own voices. We tend to, instead of asking simple questions, scenariolize, come up with the worst case scenario instead of saying, hey, you know what? You guys had a meeting and I wasn't involved. So did I miss something? Is there something I'm supposed to be doing? You can ask in a million different ways, but you can find a neutral way to be like, oh, hey, is everything okay? I wasn't involved in that. I was just wanted to check in and see if there's anything I needed to know. Um, and one missing invite is not evidence of a pattern, right? So if you just one time they didn't invite you isn't proof that there's a bigger issue at hand that you need to start looking for a new job. So it's good to be able to take space and back away from all of this, right? To look at it from a bird's eye view instead of from the view that our brain can create, the chaos that our brains can create. And lastly, I came up with this one because I feel it's something that us as women struggle with. And this is the body in the mirror. So here's the situation. I caught a reflection of myself and felt frustrated about how I looked. That's the situation. Here's the fact. The fact is, I saw a reflection in the mirror. That's it. Just saw a reflection in the mirror. Here's the story. I look terrible. Nothing fits. I let myself go. I should be further along by now. I work out so hard and nothing changes. Other women look better. I don't feel confident. I don't feel sexy, right? All the things come up. So, in that story, we created a bunch of things. But here's the thing, that story, if you look at it from discernment, is, and this is just from a neutral space, right? It's just an image. The story I'm attaching to it comes from years of comparison, maybe diet culture, pop culture, social media, because everyone's out there with, Botox and nips and tucks and all the things and all the makeup. And, it's hard as a woman. It's hard for us to move through the world in the way it is today. And it's easy to get caught up in how I should look and what all these people are doing and versus it's just unrealistic, right? We have to keep up with these unrealistic standards, but recognizing, you know what, this is just an unrealized standard and I'm internalizing it. My body has carried me through my life, right? My body has maybe carried children, birthed children, maybe nursed children. My body's maybe run marathons, hiked mountains, and conquered career goals. My body has allowed me to move through my day with ease and grace, right? My body is ambulatory. Um, this movement is not a verdict of my worth, right? Sometimes we place worth on what we see in the mirror. And we are so much more than what we see in the mirror. We are so much more than that. And we dim our own lights when we don't recognize this. So I thought it was important to bring this particular issue up because it's so prevalent in our culture right now. And us women are so hard on ourselves and feel like, oh, but she looks better. And how did she get that? And oh, Zempic, and maybe I should do this. And maybe, all the things. versus just taking pause and going, you know what? I am okay in my own skin. Or maybe I do want to do something. Who knows? Like whatever it is, there's no right or wrong. If you want to do something, if you want to nip and a tuck and you want to take Ozempic and you want to do all the things and the Botox, great. If that's what makes you feel better. But if you're someone who's like, I don't really want to do that, I don't need that, then great. You don't need to do any of it. Right. So it's just making that recognition of I'm a sovereign being. I get to use discernment in how I move forward. And I get to decide for myself what feels good. So I just really wanted to bring that up because I just think it's so important. Um, I also want to get into in this processing through this. There's some traps that will easily come up that I want to help you to navigate through. And number one is distinguishing story versus fact. Sometimes that can get fickle, right? So if you write something now like she ignored my text as a fact, for example, she ignored my text. Ignored is already a story. It implies intent. It implies that she ignored me. So you have to be careful with the words that you use because it's really she didn't respond. She didn't ignore me because we don't know that she ignored, right? She didn't respond. So you want to be careful on the verbiage you use for facts. So that's one thing you want to get clear on is just watching for interpretation words that create like ignored, dismissed, rejected, attacked, abandoned, disrespected, those kinds of things. Number two is minimizing the story, right? So some of you will write like short, little, quick, sanitized versions of the story just to kind of move through it. And you'll rush through it and recognize as you're sitting there, like, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. Make it nice and neat with a little bow. But you really want to be able to empty out in this section. This section is important when you're creating the story, because here's the thing. When you're writing the story down and it gets messy and it gets ugly and you're getting venomous, it is good for you to be able to recognize where you're at. It is good for you to be able to see, ooh, I went there. Ooh, I just said all that, didn't I? I really made a story. Like it'll allow you to see the story that you have created, the web you have weaved, so to speak. And that is really important. So write all of it out, the good, bad, and the ugly, and don't censor it. Don't sanitize it. Write it down for what it is, because clarity can really happen here when you can write it all out, just venomly pour it out and then turn around and read it back to yourself. You can sometimes make a recognition of, ooh, I just created a whole thing that I just didn't even realize. My mind just went there. And again, not to shame or blame, it's recognition, and recognition is powerful. So making sure we're not minimizing the story. Um, the third trap you can get into is skipping discernment. Okay, so this is where the transformation happens too. Um, it's the discernment isn't just writing, it's not true, or oh, it's not true, or I can see it clearly now, or it's not about that. It is sitting with the question of what else could be true, right? Or what would I tell somebody I love if this happened to them? What maybe calm, grounded advice would I give somebody I love? And what part of the story is old from a wound that I'm carrying from the past? That is good to recognize too, because it helps healing. So, the fourth one is using this to invalidate your feelings. So, your feelings are, here's the thing, and this is an interesting one, right? Because your feelings are always valid. Your feelings are always valid. They're just not always true. And that's a tough one. Our feelings are always valid. They're just not always true. And here's the thing, both can exist. Both can exist at the same time. And discernment is really learning to hold both. Discernment allows you to carry the two, allows you to go, okay, well, here's what I feel, right? And here's what's true and not. And I can look in the both and carry that both with me and choose a better way to move through it, right? Because being an adult and doing this stuff is all about having agency over your own life, choosing to navigate through things in a different way, choosing to step forward in a different way, choosing to live from a different place of being, a different way, because it serves you so much better, right? I love that. I love that because so often we think, oh, well, this is just who I am. It's just how I was raised. This is just how it's going to be. No, it's really not. You can create anything at any age, at any time. You're not bound by who you are today. You're not bound by your upbringing. You're not bound by the habits that you've created to this point. You're not bound by what somebody dictates to who you are, right? You have agency to choose, to grow, to evolve, and to expand. So never forget that because it's powerful. And this just helps you to do that um, in a really beautiful way. So let me just refer to my notes because I don't want to skip anything. Okay, so here's another thing. I want to make sure you also don't get caught up in perfectionism in this. This is not about perfection. This is not about doing it perfect all the time. This is about awareness. This is about learning new ways. You're going to fall sometimes. You're not going to come to the practice. You're going to just do old habits and that's going to happen. And that's okay. But you have awareness now. So you have awareness to come back to it. You have awareness to try different ways. And that's where the magic happens because now you know better and knowing better is doing better. You just, you know, that goes back to what I've kind of been talking about all along is, you know, we don't know what we don't know. And when you learn, that's where you grow, expand, and evolve. And it's so powerful. So I'm so impressed with you ladies for being here, for showing up for yourself, and for doing the hard work because it is that. It's not easy. Um, And something I wanted to bring up, and this was not a question and it's not in the module, but it definitely relates to it all. And I recently put a video on my social media about this because I feel it is so important. So here's the thing, and I want all of you to remember this and share this because share it with your children, share it with your women in your life, share it with the men in your life. This is an important thing that we can kind of get caught up in. And that is that your worthiness is not contingent on the value that somebody places on you. Let me say it again. Your worthiness is not contingent on the value that somebody places on you. Because so often we allow the opinions of others to affect how we feel about ourselves, right? People can misjudge us, people can misinterpret us, people can put limitations on us, all kinds of things, right? Do not give your power away by allowing someone's opinion to change your course of action on how you view yourself and how you choose to navigate through the world, because that is just too much power to give away. So I feel that this is incredibly, incredibly important. I feel that more people need to understand this and give themselves love and grace. If you are moving through this, you are doing this because you want to be better, because you want to be a better human. You want to be better yourself, to be a better to the people in your world. So nobody can take that away from you. Okay. Your worth and your value is intrinsic. It is there within you, no matter what anybody else thinks about you, right? It was there before they had the thought. So I hope you find this helpful. Again, I really want to encourage you, ladies, please jump on the community app if you have not, on the Vital Woman Reset portal. If you have not introduced yourself yet, please jump on, introduce yourself. And I highly encourage you, talk, share on there, share your aha moments, share your struggles, share your wins. Definitely get on there and share. This is a community of like-minded women that are all doing the same thing. So definitely jump on there, share, and I hope you have a beautiful Valentine's Day weekend. And I hope you have a beautiful week ahead. And peace and blessings to you. Bye. Oh, and before I say bye, actually, one more thing. Please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have questions or if you want to ask questions on the, I'm going live every 2 weeks. So if you have questions, when you're going through the modules, please send them to me. You can either send it to support@vitalwomanreset.com, or even better, jump on um, the community page on the Vital Woman Reset app and put your questions there. All right. Keep striving, ladies. Much love. Bye.